Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. Nicholas Knockan, Duskwill himself here, and welcome to the second episode of Table Talk, where we talk about and showcase independently made tabletop games, whether they be RPGs, strategy games, board games, card games, and so on. As per usual, I apologize for any poor mic quality. I am, after all, a broke college student, and I am pretty much just using my laptop microphone. But since this will be recorded, hopefully I can do some really amateur editing skills to at least make this listenable. Now, the reason I'm going to be recording this, it's entirely my fault. I dropped the ball on the whole thing. I got distracted with real life stuff involving college, had finals going on, some family stuff that needed to be taken care of, and February is just a really awkward month when it comes to timing. And this all resulted in me talking with the creators of this month's tabletop game at the very last minute and couldn't get an interview on such short notice, and instead I'm going to be talking about the game to the best of my ability. This is so last minute that I couldn't even properly research the whole thing. However, the creators were good sports about this whole endeavor. They were understanding, and I appreciate them for that as much as they appreciate me covering their game. Though, despite all this, much of how the first episode was a good example of what to expect when I do an interview with a creator, this episode I hope will be a good example of what to expect when I'm just here, sitting down, talking about a game and trying to pitch it to you, the audience, and try and get you interested in it. The game I'm going to be talking about is called Titan Effect, and it is by the creators Knight Errant Media. I have to do a disclaimer, as everyone should, as transparency never hurt anybody. When I got permission by Knight Errant Media to cover this game, they gave me links via email that led me to a store, and what it basically did was that it gave me, we'll call, a promo media package, which just gave me some stuff for free, so that way I would be able to actually talk about them. And what I got out of this media package, I've got an official soundtrack that has 8 songs on it. I have the Titan Effect Tactical Edition, which is basically the core rulebook of the game. I've got a conversion guide to convert Savage Worlds Adventure Edition to Titan Effect. I have an alternative rules book, a collection of equipment cards, as well as templates for making your own equipment cards. And Knight Errant also wanted me to tell all of you that they apparently have more stuff on the way beyond the things that I've just listed. In March and April, they plan on releasing an extra mini campaign, as well as a new guide with more backgrounds and adventure hooks for creating missions, which I find is great because already this game has a lot of lore and story to it, which we'll get into in a bit. So if you're interested, be on the lookout for that stuff in the near future. All links to find all this stuff that I'm mentioning will be in the description of the video for Knight Errant and Titan Effect, and at the end of the video, I will mention these links again, as well as sound out the links themselves, as it is very important to share this sort of information out. Now let's get started with what little I do know about Knight Errant without really naming anybody. I don't really want to overload this video with names of a bunch of different people. If you really get interested with the game, you can go out and find out about the people themselves. It'll be very easy to get that information. They're a company after all, and you can find them easily with the links that I provide. From as far as I can see with my limited research, they haven't really done anything besides Titan Effect. But that's just fine. I really can't complain about it because Titan Effect itself has a lot, very well polished and very well done for an indie tabletop game. I mean, for instance, they got an official soundtrack. They got a lot of really, really good artwork for the PDFs, and they also have a short comic book that they have to help ease people into the setting of the world. Now, I hang out with a lot of indie comic creators with their own fan bases, and chances are they'll be the ones that'll mostly be watching this, which, hi guys. So, I'm really sure that will be really good draw-in. I'm pretty sure a lot of them would appreciate that comic book and really get into the world through that, and through that possibly into the game if they want. So that's a really good move. Comic books will really help draw people in. The game itself is very interesting. It is based on the Savage Worlds system. Now, I don't know too much about the Savage Worlds system myself. I haven't really played it. I don't know many people who've played Savage Worlds. And I really don't want to get too deep into Savage Worlds. This is about Titan Effect, but just know this is based on the Savage World system. And not only that, but it's also an officially licensed campaign setting for Savage Worlds. It's all on the up and up, perfectly legal for them to do this. So if you want to play this game, chances are you probably will need to have the Savage Worlds rulebook. And I'll be sure to also provide a link in the description to where you can go and get the Savage Worlds rulebook. Now, what this game does is that it changes some of the mechanics around, and as well as restructures the whole setting to make its own story. And it is one hell of a story. Let me tell you that. Titan Effect is like a dystopia, science fiction, mystery, espionage, action, and this little thing the developer likes to call biopunk gumbo that meshes very well together. Since players will be taking the form of operatives, spies, and highly militarized squads formed by this group called the Special Executive Assault and Recon, or SPEAR, and we'll be getting more into that when we get into the PDFs in a little bit. And by espionage, I really mean espionage, alright? There are so many organizations that are canon to this setting. You just have some master geopolitical and ideological shenanigans that at this point it just becomes a weirder version of Metal Gear. You've got terrorism and counterterrorism, intelligence and counterintelligence. You can get into some really weird back and forth espionage stories that I can imagine GMs would have a hell of a lot of fun coming up with stories for that will have twists that could put M. Night Shyamalan to shame. And this just isn't your normal spies and terrorists either. You have full-blown, biologically augmented humans that look like lycanthropes terrorizing the populace, counterintelligence espers, and ideological terrorist cells employing who knows what against people. And one thing for certain, they give you a lot of material to work with. A lot of material. And to show you off that, we'll be diving into the PDFs for a bit. We'll have to say this. I'm not going to be saying a whole lot about the PDFs. Just enough to get an idea of what to expect for when you go and read for yourself. I don't want to read everything word for word. I don't even want to get to covering even half of the PDFs. I just want to entice you into checking this stuff out for yourself. But I will give you an idea of what this is all about. I will also have to say this because it's actually pretty funny and pretty great. But when I contacted the creators and they gave me this stuff, they said in the Twitter DMs that once I started messing around with their PDF, I would never want to go back to anything else again. And geez, they were freaking right. Because the PDFs sort of have like this UI capability where everything in the table of contents is clickable. It was always weird to read the PDFs, like PDF guides to certain games, because it would have a number to a section. It'll say, hey, this section starts here. But whenever you type that number into a page indicator to go to that page, it'll be a completely different page where you'll end up at. Like at one time, I found one that was like so badly off that when I went to a page, I was like either 10 pages before it or 10 pages after it. It was really badly numbered with the pages, but with how the Titan Effects PDF is like, it's sort of like the document outline for Google Docs, if you know what that's like. It's like you click on a page number or the section title within the table of contents and just boom, you're just right there. You're right at that page, right at that section that you want to get to. And since the core rulebook, the tactical edition, is like almost 1,500 pages, that is incredibly useful. That makes life a hell of a lot easier. And another thing I also like with the PDF is that it gives you kind of an idea of what kind of world you're going to be stepping into and what role you'll be going in as a player. At the beginning, after the table of contents, you get a niche quote, which is followed immediately by a few pages of a comic, which I can only assume is something like an excerpt from the actual comic. And it has like these lycanthrope creatures and animals just ripping apart what might be Arabic terrorists, maybe, but they're like viciously ripping them apart. And towards the end, you see one of the creatures turning back into a man, and there are these special force looking soldiers coming in with this badass looking dude saying stuff like your training is now complete. It really is a world of humanoid bioweapons and super soldiers and fighting wars through proxy via these different units, and it's just really interesting. Now, to go off on a bit of a tangent, I do want to say how much I just appreciate this game for existing. It's not very often you get a science fiction tabletop game, even less so with science fiction RPGs. When it comes to science fiction tabletop anything, most will be hard-pressed to think about something that just isn't Warhammer 40k or a cyberpunk title. And for just RPGs that get worked on, you get a lot more 40k titles nowadays, but beyond that, maybe you think Mass Effect for sci-fi, maybe Halo in the video game area, and then when you count both video games and tabletop RPGs, you might think Star Wars, and Star Wars may have only like one strategy game on the tabletop that I can really think about. Science fiction itself just isn't that popular of a genre, or maybe it's more accurate to say it's not a well-utilized or well-capitalized on genre when it comes to RPGs and tabletops especially. So the fact that we have a science fiction game that I'm talking about right here, right now, feels pretty good, and I enjoy it, and I appreciate that. So, and I really hope that as we go down this journey of showcasing indie games, we just see a lot more sci-fi. It isn't just not as prominent as fantasy. Now with that out of the way, let's get back to the PDF. One more thing I want to appreciate the PDFs for is the artwork and the aesthetic of the whole thing. It passes off well as more like you're reading this stuff from an official futuristic PDA from top secret military hardware. It's a nice sleek look to it. It is top quality there. And the artwork is incredible. You know, the black and white artwork are very stylized, and a lot of the colored artworks are very striking and very well done. The warm colors are very warm, the cold colors are very cold, and when they are in the same picture working together, they blend together very nicely. If the comic has artwork like what is presented in the PDFs, then I wholeheartedly recommend getting the comic book. Hopefully, I'll be able to get some images from the internet involving the game and maybe the comic book, because I really don't have the time to edit pictures myself, so I can't just get pictures from the PDF and start editing stuff around, because I would really love to showcase this artwork. It is phenomenal. I previously mentioned before that players will be taking on the role of operatives for Spear, which is like a special task force set up by Britain during World War II to act against the Nazis. In this setting, all the occult programs that the Nazis did are things that were successful. You got all that supernatural stuff going on, and Spear was made to counter Nazi occultism. And since the end of World War II, they continue to be a major player in dealing with genetically mutated monsters and psychic terrorists, and all other sorts of other unpleasantness, including like foreign special task forces that kind of do the same thing that might be, messing with the geopolitical nature of things. And the game itself is very much centered around this military-themed idea. And I appreciate this because it eliminates a lot of need for player character setup. You can bypass a lot of the typical awkwardness with an RPG where parties are more like a random amalgamation of characters that just so happens to conveniently fill out important party roles, and they all just so happen to meet at like a tavern or a bar, and for whatever reason they decided to travel together. But here, players are in a military setting, taking orders from superiors for a common goal, and you get to choose to make your character all sorts of things like a demolition expert, an infiltrator, a team leader, so on. So it makes sense that your characters get put together to make a well-rounded team that can operate effectively, and each team, according to the PDF, is usually comprised of 3 to 6 members. Now, I won't get too into beyond this with the character creation side of things, but it does allow a lot of flexibility on making your characters your own by giving plenty of options to choose from. There's different kind of builds you can get into. There is a lot of other party roles you can fill just to make your own operative the way you want them to be. You can make them more militarized, more spy, very well grounded in reality, or go into all the psychic stuff. You can go into all sorts of places. Now, I'm sure a lot of GMs will really appreciate this core rulebook because, oh man, there is a lot of lore to read about. I'm talking like pretty much 70% or more of this book is just straight up lore to read about. It gives you an incredibly rich world to dig into and just lose yourself in and enjoy with all the political nature of everything. And it even has a section to try and develop different highly varied mission types to put the players through. And it even helps players out by giving you some pre-generated characters to play. Now, pre-generated characters are amazing, by the way. More games need more pre-generated characters and missions. It allows people to really test out the game without needing too much setup, and just get a feel for everything, really get an idea of how the game works, see if it's the game for them, and then be able to conceptualize how things work so they can better understand it when they get to make their own characters, make their own missions, make their own stories. So kudos to Knight Errant for really capitalizing on that. The alternative rules PDF expands more for the quote-unquote magical side of things. We're talking the espers, we're talking telekinesis of various types, even pyrokinesis and biokinesis and so forth. It really goes into more detail on that side of the things, despite it being really, really short. It's probably one of the shorter documents, say, for maybe the conversion guide. And it even goes beyond by adding even more pre-generated characters that more focuses on the more magical angle of the game. So if you're more into those kind of builds, they got you covered for that. The only other thing I would really like to cover would be the soundtrack to the game. Now, just to say this, get this out of the way, I haven't listened to all of it. I've only listened to maybe like 3 songs. out of it. But from those 3 songs, I can tell the music is varied in tone. Even within the same song, it kind of does tone shifts, which is very nice. And it is very science fiction in design. It has a lot of synth to it, and it takes advantage of that. An experienced GM can time some moments really well with these songs, as it seems like they're very situational, and those that use music a lot in their games can probably have an easier time finding other pieces of matching music to complement the soundtrack just to extend the library for your game. And it's just really nice to chill out to, and I would love to listen to it more in my free time when I'm just doing other things around, maybe when I'm playing Stellaris or something, because that's some good stuff. Overall, I find this game to be really cool in just concept alone. You can acquire the PDF for like over $13. It's like $12.99, but it'll be over 12 be over 13 thanks to tax. You can even get physical copies, but those are a lot more expensive, with the cheapest amount being like $29 or $30. I'm not really good at really gauging stuff, even with comparisons, so I really want to know if it's exactly a good deal. But with the concept alone and the artwork and polish that's put into all of this, I would have certainly dealt out the $13 for the PDF. And even though I got all this stuff for free, I will definitely be buying hardcovers when I can manage to scrounge up enough money just so I can have a physical copy of the book just for the artwork alone. It is fantastic. But if you yourself are not really sure you want to deal out the cash quite yet, and I haven't sold you perfectly on it, they do have a free demo kit and a jumpstart document you can download so you can try it for yourself, as well as you can get the Savage World conversion guide and the alternative rules for free on their own or with purchase of the game. I would wish I could go into more detail about the game itself, but I'm not really good at explaining things unless I fiddle around with it myself. And there's just no way I could have played a game for a showcase. Maybe in the future I could touch back on this when I have played it, and maybe I could give a review on it. I think a natural step for Table Talk, where I just showcase any games, would be a show where I review the games I have talked about after playing them. Let me know what you all think about that, if y'all think that would be a good idea to go into in the future. And I would like to apologize again to the creators for being really late on getting this all done and set up. I'm glad they're really good sports about it, and that is very much appreciated. In the near future, I would love to get a hangout set up with them, and we can have an interview and get down to the nitty-gritty of the game, get more details, have a better look into it, and really just have a lot more fun with it. There's always more to see, and whether it be the creator of the game themselves or just a representative, I'm sure they would love that as well, and I would certainly appreciate a lot more time to really research into this and make a better constructed video rather than this rushed mess. But really just needed to get this out there, really showcase this game because it is really nice. It really is. Before we close off, let's get all the link stuff out there and out of the way, so that way you can find everything you'll ever need involved in this game. And as I said before, it's really important to have these links out there. You can go to the game's website to find a great deal of information about it, as well as sign up for a newsletter and even get information about Night Errant Media themselves at TitanEffect.com. You can also buy the game and other materials related to the game at drivethrough-rpg.com/product/249701/TitanEffectRPG. You can also go to the official Twitter account for the game with twitter.com/TitanEffect. The person in charge of that account is frequently on, and I'm sure they have their DMs open to everybody. So be sure to give them a friendly hello and ask them any questions you may have about the game. They seem really cool and would probably love to talk shop with you. You can also find me on Twitter with twitter.com/duskquill_team. I'm mostly on Twitter almost 24/7 and rarely sleep. So I would appreciate being bothered. I love interacting with people. You can also support me and the show by going to my Patreon at patreon.com/Dustquill. But considering Patreon is now somehow a sinking ship, and you want to avoid that, or you just don't want Patreon to have even a little bit of your money for whatever reason you may have, then on my Twitter bio, I have a link to my paypal.me account, and it's paypal.me/DustquillTeam. Yeah, that will also be in the description. And that will be the end of this video. I hope you all enjoy. See you all in the next one, and I hope you all have a wonderful